Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Klauser, with the Center Square's Western Washington reporter, Spencer Pauly, here to talk about Washington Governor Bob Ferguson vowing to defeat the federal government after U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi recently sent him and the mayor of Seattle and others letters demanding that they reverse their sanctuary policies. Spencer, you tuned into the press conference and covered it. Tell me a little bit about these letters and what Washingtonians should expect moving forward.
Sure. So background information is Governor Bob Ferguson and also Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell received letters from Attorney General Pam Bondi identifying state and city jurisdictions that engage in sanctuary policies. And basically what these do is they bar federal immigration enforcement from happening within those jurisdictions. Now, these letters are part of President Donald Trump's executive order a couple months ago, directing the U.S. Justice Department to identify these jurisdictions and go after them in court if need be. So that's what Bondi's letter says is you have been identified as a jurisdiction that engages in sanctuary policies, and you better reverse it now or we may go after you in court. Or go after criminal charges.
Spencer, yeah, I think she threatened potential incarceration.
That's right.
For Ferguson, Harrell, and these other people. I mean, that's quite the threat or the warning to issue. I mean, how did they respond in the press conference?
So, yeah, Ferguson, with Mayor Harrell behind him and other state leaders, he read out that line saying that confirming their commitment threatening to press criminal charges against anyone operating under the color of law that obstructs federal immigration enforcement. Now, Ferguson said that is breathtaking, and then said that threatening criminal prosecutions of any state official embarrasses the office of the U.S. Attorney General. So lots of drama going down in Olympia in response to this.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting tuning in myself to hear. I mean, reporters were asking, what do you expect as governor? I mean, do you expect this going to court next? And he said, look, I really don't know what to expect with the Trump administration, whether it be an arrest, going to court. But I mean, it's been repeated over and over and over again. You noted it in your story that back in 2017, when Trump first took office, he was the first state attorney general to sue the Trump administration. And he went over to do so 55 times, winning, or over 55 times. He won 55 times, lost, I believe, three.
That's right.
It's very interesting to see how this might end up, because it's not only, Ferguson's freedom of being able to walk amongst his constituents rather than being in a jail cell that's at stake. There's billions of dollars at stake. This is money that would devastate Washington state programs if it was pulled. He noted that, federal funding makes up, I believe it was somewhere between 25 and 28% of the state budget. And, his non-compliance with these orders from Bondi and the Trump administration to comply, it could cost taxpayers big time.
Well, he's saying that this is all just to defend the state's values, right? And that's a very broad statement to say to encompass all Washingtonians. But what Bondi doesn't really list what sanctuary policies that they have identified. It's basically the same letter, copy and paste, sent to Ferguson and Harrell. I had both copies. But with that being said, Ferguson suspects that she is referring to the Keep Washington Working Act. And he said there is no compromise on that act. And that's where he stands, because what this act does is it limits cooperation between the state and federal immigration enforcement. It's the same policy that Seattle has at a local level. And he says that basically this is just what represents Washingtonian values, and he doesn't want to change that. Even if there is a population of the state that's saying, hey, you should just comply, because I will note that, Republican, State Representative Jim Walsh said, this is just, if you comply with the federal government, give them the access to the prisons and jails in the state, they can locate and deport undocumented worker immigrants with criminal records, and so that they don't go back out there and maybe potentially recommit these crimes, right?
Yeah, and I can understand kind of his argument there. I mean, we're defending the values of Washingtonians. I mean, the Democrats hold the majority in the state House and the state Senate. I mean, you could make that argument. They also say that it doesn't violate state or federal law. But I mean, when it comes down to it, that's not the values of the entire state. I mean, much of central and eastern Washington would argue otherwise. I mean, it's just the fact that the three most populous counties are along the I-5 corridor, much like any West Coast state. I mean, you go to Washington, Oregon, California, you're going to see these major population hubs along the coastlines because that's where the industries are. You spoke about, potentially coming to a compromise, and that was rejected during this. But the fact that Walsh brought up that, maybe we should be sharing data from the jails and prisons with federal authorities. And I mean, I've talked to the Border Security Alliance, this nonpartisan nonprofit organization that advocates for policies that protect the border. I mean, they're hoping to carve out an exemption in the Keep Washington Working Act just for that. I mean, I was talking to a new advisory council member about it, and he was saying he's hoping to encourage dialogue between Ferguson and Brown as they move towards this new venture to kind of get that carve out. But I mean, another reporter, Brandy Cruz, very popular in the conservative side of Washington politics, she raised the question during the meeting, what about the people that maybe have died as a result of these policies? I mean, there was a state trooper that was hit by, who was later found to be an illegal immigrant, and that state trooper was killed. And that person had been arrested in the past, and had they been able to hand that information down, she argues maybe it would have been able to prevent that death. I mean, how did Ferguson respond to that?
Ferguson said he's trying to find a balance, right, between protecting undocumented immigrants who do not engage in criminal activity with the Keep Washington Working Act, but also try to enforce, laws and criminal justice. Now, that was a very short answer, didn't really provide much more. And I believe Ms. Cruz followed up, as repeating the same question, going back to it, saying you're dodging it in a sense. And he said, I've already answered it. So he's not really willing to provide more detail on, that argument. It's a complicated situation, right, Tim? I mean, you're getting pulled both ways, and I get it, right? It's interesting as a governor having to be in this position where, you're putting so much tax dollars on the line here. You're risking federal government funding, because you don't want to compromise with federal demand. But, you also have, a large demographic here that's saying, this policy is important to us. So it's tough, right?
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in court if it gets that far. I know that Ferguson was saying, look, they didn't even say what law in the letter was illegal, kind of using that as their basis for saying, look, Bondi doesn't know what she's talking about. But at the same time, the DOJ, Department of Justice, they issued the sanctuary jurisdiction list that had, I believe, over a dozen states, several cities within those states, a few different counties. I mean, I could understand if the DOJ sent out a very similar letter to all these jurisdictions and this is going to say, look, if you're not going to comply, then we'll make the case in every one of these in court. Definitely something we'll continue to keep our eyes on. And as Spencer and other Washington State reporters cover this for the Center Square. But if you'd like to catch more of their coverage, you can check it out at thecentersquare.com. But again, Spencer, thank you for covering this. And thank you for everyone that tuned in for another episode of Washington in Focus.